What's up, sons and daughters? It is Sam Jesse, and I am here on the Hokieball show with the esteemed baseball beat reporter, writer, and aficionado of Virginia Tech baseball for Tech Sideline, Chris Hirons. Chris, happy to have you on again, man. Thank you so much for doing this, and I'm glad we get to talk about some winning baseball.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out.
So let's just kind of catch everyone up with what's happening. We're going to talk about the two midweek games against VMI and the two ACC series against the Pitt Panthers and the UVA Cavaliers. The Hokies right now, to catch you up, sitting at 17-10 overall, 4-8 in the ACC. Still unranked nationally, but a big jump in the overall RPI according to D1 Baseball, now sitting at number 32 in the country. For a quick rundown on that, the Hokies are 3-6 against teams in the top 25 of the RPI. That includes UVA, Miami, and Boston College. No games played against 26 through 50. For 51 through 100, they have that 3-0 sweep against the Charlotte 49ers. 7-4 against teams 100 to 200, and 4-0 against teams 200 plus. So a couple of, if I look at their resume so far, we'll talk about the Pittsburgh series, but so far that kind of seems to be the only blemish on this, season so far is the series lost to Pitt, because Boston College looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, Boston College is legit. I think they showed you that, they are. I mean, their lineup's not as good as Tech's was last year, but they might be the Virginia Tech of 2023 of what Tech was last year. You go back to that series and their pitching was really, really good. Their hitting, they had some timely hits, but I mean, even though you lost two to Boston College, they're going to be one of the best teams in the nation going into the tournament. Not a huge deal. The Pittsburgh series, though, I mean, that'll hurt, but a lot of good teams will have kind of the early season blemishes that Tech did against Pitt.
We'll get into all of that, and I think it'll be especially interesting to look as we go on this season. Like, I was on the show last week with Sheldon, or whenever it was, 2 weeks ago with Sheldon. I was like, man, that Boston College, like, that sucks. Losing to a bottom tier ACC team at home, like, that's bad. Well, doesn't look too bad now. Taking one of them looks like it's okay, especially since two losses were on a doubleheader. Mm-hmm. I think that helps you out a bit here. Let's get into some of the games since then. And Chris, it started off, Sheldon, last time we were talking, he was about to head over to the VMI game. He got himself a good show. Hokies win the first win midweek of the year against VMI, 11-0. Dominant midweek performance we've seen across the country. Not so easy for a lot of teams in these midweeks. Wake Forest, one of the contenders for the national title, beat by Elon last night. NC State's had some issues. LSU has had even some issues. Tennessee has had issues. So really good that the Hokies continue to take care of these games.
Yeah, I mean, the VMI win, I mean, Garrett Michelle hit the team's third Grand Slam of the year. I think Carson DiMartini got ETSU, and then Carson Jones got Radford. That was really the big highlight of that game. Obviously, Tech took care of business, but VMI is better than what they have been in years past. I mean, they beat Ole Miss. I know Ole Miss just doesn't have that good of a year, but still, a VMI team went down to Ole Miss and beat them.
Yep, and that says a lot. They have a really, I would almost say, just like a unique brand of baseball where they just try to get guys on base, and then they try to steal almost every single runner 1 through 9. I think Virginia Tech did a good job of kind of neutralizing that through their two games. We'll get to their second one later. Then we talked about how important this series was going to be for Virginia Tech. Go up to Pittsburgh, you lose the series 1-2. Started off with yet another close loss for the Hokies. Game 1 lost 4-5 or 5-4. That's just how you say it. Drew Hackenberg started this game. Overall for the game, okay. First couple innings, really tough, especially that first inning. A lot of soft contact singles for Pittsburgh. And that's kind of how Pitt ended up winning this series, is they weren't mashing the ball too much. It was just everything they hit landed on green grass.
Yeah, I mean, Drew, not even the first few innings, it was just the first inning. He kind of struggled. He loaded the bases, ended up giving up 3 runs, and then had the bases loaded again with no outs, and Pitt didn't get any more runs out of the inning. So, they go to from the second inning to about the sixth inning, tied at 3. Jack Hurley, hits his first inning 3-run homer with 2 outs. One of the only real timely hits that Tech had. He ended up hitting a solo homer in the top of the 6th or top of the 7th inning. But I mean, that was Tech's problem, is that they loaded the bases in the second inning, or they either loaded the bases or they had runners in second and third, and they just couldn't come up with that timely hit with no outs or 1 out.
Yeah, and we look at Virginia Tech so far this year. I think the offensive production overall has been to what we expected it to be, maybe even a little bit above what we expected it to be. But there is still a lot of this reliance on really big innings when they've needed just one hit. Need one guy, or you got a guy on second, got to hit him in, or you got somebody on third, we need a sac fly. They haven't gotten that this year. And I think that has to do with, one, the youth of the lineup. There's still a lot of young guys in this lineup. And I also think it has to play with guys maybe being a bit over aggressive at the plate, not really taking what the pitcher's giving them, kind of swinging for the fences when you don't really need to. Hopefully that's something they get kind of out of their system. We see that a lot early season, guys just trying to mash homers all the time, not really working out. So yeah, we will talk about the next game is when all that hard contact and aggressive at the plate worked out for them. Hokies win it 20-12, a football score for the second game. Offensive explosion for both teams, especially in I believe it's the 6th and 7th innings for both teams, had all those runs. I'm never going to complain about scoring 20 runs. Quite frankly, in that case, I don't care what the pitching does. Bullpen struggled a bit towards the end of the game, but overall, I'm going to take a 20-12 win all day.
Yeah, I mean, the weather was, I'm sure I didn't go, but I heard it was really, really crazy up there. The reason they pitched Hackenberg on Friday versus Saturday was because it wasn't as windy, and they thought that Griffin Green gives up a lot of soft contact, and when he's on, the ball's on the ground and it's going right at infielders, and they didn't want the ball to get up in the air, and it was super, super windy on Saturday. I think the wind gusts were up to like 40 or 50 miles an hour. But that was a part of the reason there. And then obviously, the reason that the teams combined to score 42 or 32 runs was, the wind all day. Carson Jones, I mean, even on TV, he crushed his home run in the 6th or 7th inning. I wish Pitt had a track man, but unfortunately they don't. But I would have loved to know how far that ball had gone.
We got to get him one. Everyone needs to pull their money together, get Pitt a track man so we can see how far Carson Jones hit that home run. Yeah, I think it was almost, I've used this word a bit this year, but like cathartic for the Hokies, where you feel like in these close games, things aren't going your way. It really felt like they wanted to score 30 runs that game, right? Like that felt really good. Unfortunately for the Hokies, the good times didn't last too long. The Sunday rubber match, another 5-4 loss. It was another game where the Hokies were up about midway through. They were up 4-0. They just couldn't move runners around the bases that well, and they couldn't keep Pitt off the base paths in the last few innings. So that's a tough loss, tough way to lose a series with 2 1-run losses.
Yeah, I mean, Arguelles was good for his 4, or I think 5+ innings, and he was good. I mean, the bullpen, yes, it did struggle, but the problem that weekend was health. You didn't have Christian Worley, who hasn't made an appearance since the first Miami game. Henry Weicker was hurt during that series, and so was Kieran Higgins. And the problem for Tech was that they kind of had to put guys who had never been in that spot, like Tyler Dean, who he's an effective pitcher, but he hasn't really been in that spot this year. And even though, yes, he failed, that kind of does set him up to be successful in situations like that, either later this year or next year. I mean, we saw that a lot in 2021 when, Tech blew a lot of leads and coughed up those leads, that set them up for, 2022. But even now that they're blowing leads, they didn't do that early in 2021. They did that in the later portion of the season. But I think that they're doing it now, it might benefit them, come, the last half of the season.
Yeah, it does feel like I don't think we've talked about how the team has had a little bit of injury issue enough. We'll talk about Chris Canizero, who was out for a few games there, but it does seem like the bullpen is like greater than the sum of their parts almost. When you take away some of those guys, you put guys in situations that they're maybe not perfect for, is when you get some of those issues. And like I said, like if Tech throws Christian Worley in this game, like I think they win this game.
Yeah, for sure. I think so too.
If they throw Kieran Higgins, they might win that game. Kieran Higgins, he has shown multiple times. We'll talk about the UVA series. He can throw 2 innings of near perfect baseball for you out of the pen. So I don't want to be the they were injured, that's the excuse guy. But if Tech has a healthy bullpen, this might be a season like a series sweep. It was that close. So overall, it's a tough L. I think in hindsight, this will be one where you look at Virginia Tech's resume and go, that's not a great bullet point on the resume, but this is something that they can easily overcome. You avoid the sweep, you get one, it's on the road. There are plenty of opportunities for big series wins in the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, a lot of those teams, they have those series where they weren't healthy or they weren't good, and usually that kind of happens later in the season. So maybe it's a good thing for Tech that's happening now, or it happened a week and a half ago instead of the second to last ACC series of the year, where the committee is really looking at everything that happens.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go to the next midweek game. Another game against the VMI Keydets, a 9-7 late inning win for the Hokies, a game that they were in control, and then all of a sudden it got pretty hairy there at the end. Hokies, though, used the long ball late in the game, 3 solo shots to win this one over VMI. Overall, you leave with a W. That's all you can ask for, right?
Yeah, for a midweek, I mean, that's really all you're hoping to get. I mean, it doesn't matter how pretty it is. I mean, you're on an hour and a half bus ride up there. You got class, you got paper earlier in the day, something due at midnight, and I think that's a lot of what people don't take into account with baseball is that yes, they're athletes, but also they're students. And that hour and a half bus ride up there, it sucks. But and then also part of that game is that they were just kind of trying to get healthy for the UVA weekend. So that's why I think you saw Grant Umberger go his 4 innings, and Luke Jackman threw 2 more, and then Jonah Hurley. I don't think they wanted to use Hurley or Andrew Sentlinger, their main bullpen. They're their main weekend guys from the bullpen, but I think in order to lock down that game, you had to use them.
Yeah, I remember, this is a thing with softball as well, but some of the girls on the softball team were in some of my classes. They talked about how difficult it was being mentally and physically prepared to play those midweek games, even some of the weekend ones, because unlike, football, basketball a little bit, but you're kind of traveling and playing all the time. And when you're not traveling and playing, you're preparing to travel and play. So it can be a little bit more difficult than the other sports to show up every single game. So I think for the Hokies, the fact that they've continued to do that all year is a testament to the coaching and training staff are doing their job, but also the players mentally being engaged in every game. I think that's something where we talked about the home run hammer and stuff like that, where that kind of helps because it's kind of a built-in momentum boost, a built-in rallying cry for this team. Obviously, you've already hit the home run, so that's a pretty big momentum boost, but it's a way to keep energy up in some of these games. I think Chef and the coaching staff have done a great job of creating that culture with Virginia Tech where every game is a game to get excited. Every game is a game to play aggressive.
Yeah. In VMI, they couldn't use the hammer. They didn't look extremely fired up after I think Michelle hit the go-ahead homer in the 9th, just because I think part of the reason for they just wanted to get out of there. I mean, VMI they're really really good at home too. They've won, even though it looks like a high school field. I don't know if you watched
What
the
was
broadcast.
going on with that field?
But I mean, they had won, I think, 12, 13 games at home going into it. So I mean, they were obviously really, really good at home. So I mean, Tech easily could have gone in there and gone down, 4-0 or what, and then lost 8-5 or whatever. I think it was good that Tech, got out to that early lead, and yeah, they coughed up the lead, but eventually came away with the win, especially after taking the bus ride up to Lexington.
Yep. And good experience for young pitchers, like you said, getting them
Mhm.
some game action in tough situations against a team that's really difficult on the base paths, which adds another element to what a pitcher has to think about. Let's move on to the big ticket topic, a series that the Hokies should not have needed any motivational speech beforehand. A series W against number 5 Virginia. Chris, I put this out on Twitter. It was very late night, didn't get a whole lot of traction, but is this the biggest regular season series win of John Sheff's tenure?
I would say it's no matter how the season finishes, it's probably the biggest series win of the season. I don't think it's the biggest series win of his tenure. I think you go back to the Louisville series last year. Tech really, it was a 5v7. I think it was like Tech was the 5th best team. Louisville was number 7. I think that really proved that, Tech was ready to compete with the best, even though, we kind of knew that all year, they were really good, but you get a 5v7 matchup late in the year after classes end, and they take care of business on Saturday and Sunday. But maybe for momentum boosting, it might be, Tech's biggest series win in his tenure, just because, they were scuffling. They lost, 3 straight series. And, you go down in game 1, you lose, you go down 9-0, you come back and win the Saturday and Sunday game.
Yeah, let's talk about the first game. A 9-5 loss, down 9-0 after 5.5 innings. But after that, the Hokie bats really came alive. And I thought, I don't think a team will make UVA's pitching staff look like that again this year. That was really, really dominant offensive play from the Hokies. Another tough start for Drew Hackenberg. He went 4 innings, gave up 8 hits, 8 earned runs, 3 walks, 5 Ks. I think Drew Hackenberg is immensely talented. I think he is a very, very, very good pitcher. But we've seen a couple not great performances from him lately. Is it something to worry about a little bit, or are we just saying we'll have a return to the mean here pretty soon?
I think it's a return to the mean. John Sheff said after the game, he said, "We should have never started that game. That was my fault. It was pouring when Hackenberg was essentially the entire time Hackenberg was pitching. It was pouring. It was windy. He you can't keep making excuses that the weather and all that, but Tech's they've gotten their fair share of bad weather. I mean, you go back to the Boston College doubleheader. I mean, that kind of throws a wrench in everything.
Yeah.
Same with the Miami doubleheader. But I think Hackenberg, I mean, one, I think there's a better scouting report on him, and that's why he's being hit around a little bit better. And then also you go and you pitch in the rain and in the wind. You can't, just nothing's really going in your favor.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything to worry about. I think I'm more worried about Fridays have really been tough on the Hokies, and that just kind of puts you so far behind. I think Drew, we're going to see him pitch some pretty darn good games here coming up, but I think we got really excited about him, and this pitching and these 3 starters, him, Griffin Green coming back was really exciting, but they're also going up against some of the best offenses in the country. Miami and UVA together have been 2 of the best offenses in the country this year, and they've done it against really good competition. So, I'm not worried about Virginia Tech giving up some runs to these teams. I think, and we'll talk about this a little later as well, but I would like to see the starters squeeze out 1.33 more inning, because the bullpen has been a little bit more inconsistent than what we would have liked, especially because some of those injuries and guys who are either not 100% or they're coming off of an injury. I think you really need to get some deeper from Griffin Green and Drew Hackenberg, especially, who are returning starters. We need to get some deeper starts.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. I mean, I don't think the team would want to dip into its bullpen with an out or two in the fifth. They'd rather do that to either begin the sixth or begin the seventh. I think Tech was given a real treat last year with its offense in spotting a starter, a 3 or 4 run lead in the first or second inning. And that translates over the pitching side, gives the pitcher, they can work more freely. They don't have to, worry about every single pitch they're throwing. So I think that's part of it, but also, as I mentioned, I mean, there is a scouting report now on these guys. Like Griffin Green had thrown maybe 18 innings collegiately, and then Hackenberg, had never thrown a collegiate inning, heading into last year, and now that Griffin threw 7 innings last year, and then Hackenberg threw 90, I think teams can really pick up on what they're doing.
Yeah, in the last 3 starts for Drew Hackenberg, he's giving up almost 10 hits per start. Not the kind of pitching you'd expect from him, but also, we all talked about that Pitt series. It was a lot of soft contact, and the UVA series, I think they got to him a little bit more, but there was the weather, so you'd hope that he can clean things up. The game before that against Boston College, who's been a pretty good offense, he did fine. He went 6 1/3, only gave up 5 hits, had 6 strikeouts to only 3 walks. So should expect a little uptick from him.
Yeah, I mean, the UVA's lineup. I mean, it's not as good as Tech's was last year, but I mean, they have 9 dudes in that lineup.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good offensive team.
There's not a single out in that lineup.
Yep. My other thought for this is I thought Exum is a guy we've seen, not Anton Exum, football star, but he's pitched really well this season. I've been really, really impressed with him.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob Exum, I'm blanking on where he's pitched before. Maybe he pitched against Miami. Yeah, he did pitch against Miami. But I mean, he threw 5 innings of 1-run ball. I think the only run he gave up was in his first inning. He pitched maybe a second inning, but he pitched so well. His off speed was really, really good. His slider was working so well. I asked him actually after the game where he kind of has a funky delivery, kind of a little low, not quite 3/4, maybe a little bit lower in between. I would say in between 3/4 and sidearm release point. He actually said he picked that up from his high school coach, Billy Wagner, the should be Hall of Famer, but he pitched really well. The freshman that game played pretty well. I think Brody Donay, I don't remember if he homered, but I know he had a pretty big double in the later innings.
Yeah, I think that's another storyline from the beginning part of this season for Virginia Tech is how productive the freshmen have been, and that's a great sign for the program. I think for me personally, it tells me that last year wasn't a blip, that they're going to continue to bring talent into this program, whether that be through the transfer portal with guys like Chris Canizero or with true freshmen like Brody Donay and Jacob Exum. So really exciting stuff. Exum so far this season, 9 1/3 innings pitched, only 7 hits, only 3 earned runs, 10 strikeouts to 3 walks. So pretty good stuff from him. And that includes games against Miami and UVA. Got roughed up by Miami a little bit, but other than that, it's been pretty darn good. Rubber match game for let's talk about the game too. Excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. A 12-10 win, a game that looked like a blowout and got really hairy at the end. Hokies were up 11-4 after 4 innings in this one, but UVA came back. They had 4 runs in the 9th and the tying run at the plate. Takeaway from this: 1, awesome win. Love to see it. Second takeaway: you got to be shut down out of the bullpen in that situation. That was way too close.
Yeah, I mean, they were up. What was it? Heading into the 9th, they were up by 12. They were up 12-6. And Brady Kirtner had only thrown 2 shutout innings. So I understand the reason. They ran him back out there, see if he could shut the door, save another arm for the next day. But kind of got hit around, and maybe it's a good thing that he got hit around in his third outing or his third inning of this outing. He gets that out of his system, to get hit around. But Jonah Hurney, who hasn't had the greatest season up
Mhm.
until Saturday. He looked good in his in his outing, tying run. I don't know if he was out at the plate or if it was on deck, but to come in the situation to where you probably don't think you're gonna pitch. I think that it was really good to so he could lock himself back in mentally and pick up the strikeout to end the game.
Yeah, I look, a win is a win. I'm going to take it. Obviously, like every team in the country would love to have a Emmanuel Clase on their roster, but those don't really exist at the college game, to be quite honest. Like, not many teams have a designated closer, right? It's kind of closer by committee, depending on who you're going up against, what their style is. One thing for Jonah Hurney, which I think we see in the next game as well, is he's really good at getting soft contact. Like that's his go-to. And when you just need outs, I think that's the right guy to go to. We'll see that in the next game as well, where the Hokies won 12-7. Tough start. UVA scored 3 runs in the top of the first, and I think just a phenomenal answer by the Hokies. They score 4 runs in the bottom of the first, really recaptured all that momentum from the night before. And after that, it was all Hokies. Arguelles, I think not his best stuff, but he survived. And I think when you're going up against an offense like UVA, we'll see this when they go up against Wake Forest and some other teams later in the season. It might not be about holding a team to 1, 2, or 3 runs. It might be about not giving up 7 or 8 runs.
Yeah, I think, and what you need, especially in college baseball, out of a Sunday guy, is someone who can get you through 3 innings, someone who can keep you in the ball game. You're not looking for that guy to go, 6, 7 innings of 2-run ball. That's not the purpose of a Sunday guy. The Sunday guy's there. He's there to get you through the first 3 innings of the game before you turn it over to the bullpen. But one thing I want to add about the offense is that I think UVA hadn't allowed more than 6 runs in any of its games heading into the Tech series, and then Tech put up 12 runs twice, back-to-back days, and they put up 5 runs the night before. I thought it was really good from Friday that they had scored those 5. They outscored UVA by 5 in the last 4 innings, and I think that really carried the momentum over to Saturday, and then the Saturday momentum carried over to that first inning on Sunday. And I think once Carson DeMartini tripled home those 3 runs in the bottom of the first to tie the game at 3 again, that had a regional type feel, a regional type crowd. I thought that was peak college baseball. I thought that
Yep.
was probably the coolest at bat, aside maybe from Jack Hurley's go-ahead homer, Chris Canizaro's homer in the later innings that kind of put the game away. I thought that was college baseball at its peak when Carson DeMartini tripled home 3 runs.
Yeah, it was just the crowd was amazing for both of those games. I think that shows the growth of the program, maybe even more than the results in some ways, that people are caring about going to these games and selling out and being loud. I mean, it wasn't just the seats were full. It was full all the way down to the bullpen on the third base side, and down the camera doesn't go towards the first base side too much, but from what I saw from pictures and stuff, there's people lined up all the way down the first base line as well. So just an awesome atmosphere. Shout out Hokie Nation for that one, but also shout out to the players who they put together a show and they were aggressive on the base pass and they were swinging for power. I really liked how the Hokies offense ran in this UVA series. I think it was their most, I would say, it was maybe the most aggressive we've seen Virginia Tech in their offensive approach this year while still playing within themselves, right? Guys weren't swinging at sliders that were clearly, off the plate. Guys weren't, you're talking about baseball, like looking for your shoebox when you're at the plate, right? Like pick a shoebox somewhere in the strike zone, wait for a strike there, and then go out and be aggressive on that. I think Virginia Tech did a really good job of plate discipline there. And yeah, just over the moon at that series W. first back-to-back series win against UVA since 99-2000, I believe.
Yeah, so they played midweeks since Tech wasn't in the ACC then.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think for a weekend series back to back, you have to go back to like 84, 85, sometime in the mid 80s. But I mean, I think we also have to talk about the bullpen and how good that was.
I have Jonah Hurney's stats for his back-to-back games pulled up. 2 2/3 innings and only 2 hits and 1 walk.
I think he's turned a corner
than that.
From where he was earlier this year. I think he's turned a corner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, even Kieran Higgins, who I think that was his first outing since his injury. I think there was either at Miami or Pitt, or I guess probably VMI because he started the VMI game at home. I thought Higgins was good. Went 2 2/3 innings, didn't allow a run. And then Griffin Stig. I mean, he was for a freshman to come in against in-state rival. He's an in-state kid, so I'm sure he understood. I didn't get to talk to him, but I'm sure he understood kind of what the rivalry meant to Tech and the crowd that was there. Perfect example of bend don't break. Loaded the bases up in the fourth. I think UVA was up a run or two, and with 1 out, I think he struck out the last 2 guys. I mean, that was a big spot for him. I think this weekend was a really, really good sign of that Tech, can turn it around, and that, the freshmen, they're getting experience, and they're getting experience in situations they've never been in before, and picking up confidence and experience that they'll be able to, parlay that into the later half of the year.
Yeah, one of those series wins that, this could be the difference between making the tournament and not making the tournament. This could be the difference between putting the check mark of success on a season and the red X of that was not great. So do I think Virginia Tech is back to where they need to be? Probably not. There's a lot of work left to do against some really good teams. But this put Virginia Tech back in kind of the national spotlight. It put Virginia Tech back on terms of like, oh yeah, that is a really good baseball team. Because for a while there, Virginia Tech kind of fell off. So I think this was huge to do it against a team in UVA that I think is going to probably end the season as one of the top teams in the nation, has a very good chance of being a top 8 seed as well. Perfect. Could not have gone better for the Hokies. Because really outside of the first 5 innings of game 1, Tech didn't only win, but they kind of dominated this series.
Yeah. I mean, UVA kind of had control of it in the middle of game 3, but that's about it. I mean, Tech really kind of put their stamp on that series after the 5th, 6th inning on Friday.
All right. So then let's look at let's wrap up the other 2 weeks. Give me 3 things that we loved. I think one of them is pretty obvious. In the show notes, I just put beat UVA. Love it.
I mean, it's great. They beat UVA. You take care of your in-state rival. You couldn't ask for much more, even if the team didn't win a single ACC series the rest of the year. I think it is. You're seeing. I'm not gonna say they're successful if they lose every single other series, but you look back and you're like, okay, yeah, they took care of UVA at home. That's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. And I remember asking John Sheff 2 years ago after the series win at Miami. And I was like, does that feel, it was early in the season too. And I was like, does that feel like some sort of like validation of the program you've built to go down and beat one of the most historic programs in the country, not only the ACC, beat them on the road in night games in front of a full crowd? And his response was like, no, like the validation for that doesn't really come from the results. It comes from how we work every day. It comes from the guys we continue to bring into the program and stuff like that. So he might think that. I think fans will think a little differently, but from inside the clubhouse, the mentality isn't we're the pesky underdogs. We need to prove everyone wrong. Oh, we won the series. That's great. We achieved our goal. for inside the clubhouse, we played a good team at home, but we expect to win that. I saw the tweet Virginia Tech put out. It was like 5-2 series against top 25 teams in the last 7 series or something like that. Like Virginia Tech is a program that wins against high level baseball now. And it's been like that for, the past few years. So really awesome to see not only the result, but also the expectation of the result from the program.
Yeah. I mean, if you take away, and I get it, and you don't want to make excuses for, a team, but if you take away the back half of 2021, I mean, this team has kind of done nothing but win. Maybe, the 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks of ACC series this year, they didn't win as much, but I mean, they've done a lot of winning in the last 3 years. They've kind of turned that corner from where they were, pre John Sheff era to where, everyone comes out. And I think a lot of people expected Tech to win this series, especially a lot of fans and even some of the national writers that, I think Tech's right up there with some of the best programs that, if they're at home in front of a good crowd, they're supposed to win.
Yeah. And the next thing that we loved, I think, talking about taking care of your business, taking care of midweeks, got to do it. And I think Virginia Tech, we talked about this, done a really good job this year of just coming out with wins. That's all you need to do. My third thing that I put down that I really loved is the last few series, it had felt like that little bit of mojo and swagger wasn't really there like we saw last year and like we saw at points this year that we wanted to see. This UVA series, it felt like that was back. It felt like even in game 1 that the Hokies lost, there was that energy and that excitement and that, Virginia Tech plays a very fun brand of baseball. And I think we saw that brand on display this weekend.
Yeah. I don't know if the mojo ever left. I'm not going to speak for, Tech's program, but maybe a little bit was lost when, you go down to Miami, lose a couple heartbreaking games, and then you go up to Pitt, on back-to-back weekends, you lose a few games there. I mean, it could dampen your spirits, but I know Tech is confident in themselves. I don't know if they've ever gotten down on themselves or down on a teammate, but I think this weekend you saw kind of the resemblance of how close this team is. And you saw it a lot last year. That team was really close, but this week it's kind of a brotherhood. I mean, I think they've gotten 75% of the team to shave their heads as a team identity thing.
Which is the most college baseball thing of all time.
Yeah. I was asking Jack Hurley about it. He's like, "Oh, we were at a cookout and, some girl, a team cookout, or they were hanging out as a team. And, someone suggested it. And, a girl just kind of shaved their heads. And I think they're trying to get everyone to do it. I don't know if everyone will, but I think they're up to about 75% of the team has a shaved head. And I think you saw that, they're still playing as a team, especially this weekend. They're fired up for each other. The hey in the dugout when someone scores a run. They've never been gone, but I think they were a little bit louder this weekend than they were in previous weeks. But again, I don't fully know. I wasn't there.
Will you be shaving your head in solidarity with the team?
No. Funny you asked that. I did that during quarantine and I guess that summer, like the May, and my mom hated it. And she said she didn't love it when I shaved it. So sorry, Mom.
Yeah, I will not be. I'll be an unbiased reporter and will not shave my head. That's very brave of both of us. Big J journalism right there. Something that needs to improve. Obviously, there's a lot of things that could improve. But what's one thing that you're like, this is number one?
If you were talking to me 2 weeks ago, I would say, hitting with guys on base, picking up that timely hit. And I get it, it's baseball. That timely hit doesn't always come, but there were a few spots last week where, those timely hits came against UVA that weren't coming against Miami and Pitt, to where, they were leaving a runner or two or even three out an inning. I think that was what needed to improve, and I think they were able to improve that this weekend. But maybe getting a better performance from the bullpen, but they're getting guys healthy, or you could even argue that health needs to improve, and that's kind of whoever draws the short stick there. But Christian Worley, I don't know if there's a timetable for him. That really wasn't specified. Ryan Kennedy, who's a talented freshman, he was dealing with an elbow injury earlier this season. He hasn't been able to come off of that. I'm not sure what the point is. I haven't asked about that lately, but I think health was getting better, and it is getting better, but I think that might be what needs to improve for this team to have the chance to win every single regular season series rest of the year.
Yep, I'd agree. I think when we talked about that at the very beginning of the year when doing our season preview this is a good pitching staff if they stay healthy. If one or two guys goes down, they lose kind of that flexibility that they've built with having an experienced bullpen, a talented bullpen. So yeah, need guys to get healthy. I would say my thing is still strikeouts are a little bit too much right now. Sitting at 25.4% K rate. That's not very good when a quarter of your at bats are ending in strikeouts. And look, I think they did better against UVA, but I think UVA's pitching was also, they were a little bit more outside of the zone than those pitchers are normally. So a lot of those at bats were more obvious. Don't swing at this, then you would get more of those in between pitches, if that makes any sense. So the K rate needs to go down, especially with the guys on base. This Virginia Tech offense is really good, but I don't think they can, they need to get guys on base. They need to move along the base paths, and still struggling with that a bit. I think it is getting better though, and I think it will get better as the season goes on.
Yeah, I just want to add a kind of a funny note, I guess. On Sunday, neither team had struck out until like the fourth inning.
And you know what triggered it? It was Evan Hughes. Phenomenal call, by the way, Evan. But he said, "Oh, not having been a strikeout. Next 5 batters all struck out."
Yeah, I mean, baseball's crazy.
And an announcer's curse right there, I guess. But I found that very funny. Player of the weeks, pretty obvious one here. Jack Hurley, ACC Player of the Week. He was D1 Baseball's National Player of the Week. He was Collegiate Baseball's National Player of the Week. I'm just going to throw his stat line up here for the last week. 1.95 OPS, 5 home runs in 5 games, and 11 RBIs.
Yeah, if you go back to the Pitt series, he's hit 7 and 7. And I don't know. I mean, you could argue that, or I guess you can make a pretty good case that, his home run in the Super Regional against Oklahoma, that brought Tech back within a run during the first game was probably one of the bigger swings of his life. But I think that UVA homer this weekend to put him up 7-6 in the bottom of the 6th, I think that was probably one of his bigger swings of his life and probably of his Tech career. It reminded me a lot of, I said this on the Tech Sideline, their TSL Today the other day, that it reminded me exactly of Gavin Cross's homer in the 7th inning against UVA during the Sunday game last season. I think that game was either tied at 4-4 or 5-5, something like that. And Jack and Gavin kind of hit the same exact part of the ballpark, both kind of, towards the bullpen and right field. I thought, that was probably one of, his bigger swings of his life. And one of the bigger swings of the season, probably a momentum shifting swing. And then even Chris Canizero, sorry to keep going on, but his was a 3-run jack that, kind of put that game away for Tech, battling a bone bruise for the past week, 2 or 3. But I thought, and Jack even said to Chris after he hit it, he's like, man, that was probably one of the biggest swings you ever had in your life, probably the biggest.
Yeah. And I think, that's something so cool about Chris Canizero. And when we look back at the season, it'll be really cool to hopefully have a sit down interview and ask him about this, is like, A year ago, you're at Bucknell. No offense to Bucknell, but it's not ACC baseball, and here you are having this monstrous season, this all ACC caliber season, and doing it against the best teams in the country. What a change in a year for him, and that's been awesome to see. Another thing I liked with Jack Hurley was he's been pretty good in the outfield this year as well. Um, you know, he was flawless this week in the outfield in some less than stellar conditions, like we talked about. So credit to him doing it on the field and in the batter's box.
Yeah, I mean Jack just played out of his mind this weekend. I mean, even shifting from center field to left field for the Sunday game because of where the wind was going, and where UVA was kind of hitting those balls into the gap. Eddie Eisert, I think they ended up ruling it a hit, but not that he misplayed a ball, but that ball kind of kept carrying in the ninth inning, to where it kind of just bounced off the wall. And I think that was part of it, or that was probably the reasoning to move Jack from center to left.
Yeah, and they had Carson playing in center. Too, which is where Carson's played a lot there. He's played summer league in center as well. He's a really rangy outfielder. I think they feel comfortable with him there.
Yeah, he had 10 putouts on Sunday.
Yep, that'll do it. That'll do it. Yeah, I think the flexibility of Sheldon and I talked about this on the last pod as well, where Virginia Tech's defense has been really good, but they haven't maybe been making as many stellar plays as they did last year. That kind of made the pitching numbers also look a bit better. I think, though, they've been really solid overall, and the outfield especially, playing a lot of these home games in less than stellar condition. It's a tough outfield to play. Both teams have to play the same outfield, and so I think, considering the conditions, the defense has been pretty darn good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, excuse me, I'm still battling allergies here in Raleigh. One of the worst years for pollen on record in Central North Carolina, apparently. Next up, speaking of Central North Carolina and the RDU area, next up for the Hokies is a series at the Duke Blue Devils, a good Duke team that is going to probably be very close to the Hokies in the Coastal Division standings for the rest of the year. They're sitting at 19-10, 6-6 in the ACC, and a respectable number 50 in the RPI. Big series for the Hokies. This is going to be one that they could do some jockeying in the standings right here. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think you're in, you're obviously not in must sweep territory yet, for Tech, but I think this is a series that you kind of have to win to keep yourself away from the bubble. But Duke has had kind of the same season that Tech has. They've looked really, really good in some spots, and other times you're like, how in the world did they lose those two games? But it should be a good series. I think these two teams are evenly matched. Duke is a lot better than they were last year, where they kind of just rolled over at the end of the season in Blacksburg.
Yeah, and look at Duke's schedule real quick for those who don't know. They lost the series 1-2 against a really good Wake Forest team. They had an 8-1 win there. 2-1 series win against a Clemson team, not a great Clemson team, but 2-1 series win on the road. You always take that. Lost the series 1-2 against North Carolina. That one also on the road. And then won the series 2-1 against Pittsburgh. Had a pretty bad Friday game in that one, but came back and played well on Saturday and Sunday. And then this midweek, a 15-6 win against top 15 Campbell. The Campbell Camels have had a really good season, especially offensively. Took care of them in that one. So going to be a test for the Hokies. Really cool. I really wish they were playing at Durham Bulls Park.
They are, aren't they?
On their schedule, it has Jack Coombs Field for all three.
Oh, did they change it?
That's
they were supposed to be playing at Durham this week. I looked yesterday and it said that they were supposed to be playing there. Are they not playing at the Bulls Park this
schedule? No? The schedule on goduke.com says Jack Coombs Field.
Yeah, they on the Duke schedule.
Maybe it's wrong.
On the Duke schedule earlier, I think yesterday they had that they were playing at the Bulls Park.
I hope they are, because that place is awesome.
And I mean, part of it might have to do with weather. I know it's supposed to rain all 3 days down there. A lot of rain coming in, but it'd be nice that they played at the Bulls Park because all AAA stadiums have been outfitted for Statcast.
Yes, and not only that, but it's a historic park. It's very cool. If you ever have a chance to go see a game there, highly, highly recommend it. Big series for the Hokies. I'm not going to put the must-win label on it, but I'm also going to put the can't lose. I think it's more of a can't lose than a must-win. We'll put it that way. Like, if you lose this one, even 1-2, Virginia Tech they're going to run out of games here pretty quick. If you drop this series, if you win this series, even if you don't sweep it, just 2-1, now you're looking at, okay, we're back on track this season a bit. A 2-1 series victory would put you at 6-9 in the ACC. Some tough games left, but also some winnable games. So you'd feel pretty good about that. Any last thoughts? Chris has been awesome. Hopefully next time we have you on, we'll have more positive things to talk about.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Thanks for having me on again. Appreciate it. I love doing this.
All right, that'll do it.